to our new listeners, to staying uncomfortable. In life, a lot of things happen. In when I say a lot of things can happen is by having uncomfortable conversation. Over the last few years, I've noticed that the more uncomfortable conversations that I have, the more fulfilled I feel. And I wish I would have done this a couple of years back when I was in a relationship. And I'm sure that in your experience in your life as well, you feel that if you had this type of conversations, you probably could also have gained a lot.
Yeah, it's the uncomfortable conversations, and it's the how is our relationship unique compared to all the other relationships I have in the world, right? You have sort of your level one relationship, which is how's the weather? How are your kids?
Yeah.
Where did you move from? What do you do today? What do you like to do, right? Like your basic questions that you ask everybody.
Well, which is just touching the surface, right? And that's what everybody's known for, is like, hey, short talks. Like,
yeah, high level. And you know, Tim Ferriss actually says a person's success is defined by the number of uncomfortable conversations they're willing to have. And how true is that? Because diving right in, we're talking about relationships. I know you were having problems in your relationship and you just never could pull the trigger and break up with the girl.
yeah, because the unknown, the goddamn unknown, right? Like, it is, if you've ever been in a relationship where you know that, dude, I'm not happy. Like, I'm with this person, yet I'm not happy. And that's the place that I was in. I was really in that place where I was like, man, like, I'm just doing this because I guess I have to, or like, I don't want to be alone. But if I could go back in time and if I could have the conversation, the uncomfortable conversation about the things that I didn't like or things that I wish we could have worked on as a couple, dude, I guarantee you, like, our relationship would have been so different. But I was scared of the unknown.
Yeah, and there's two parts to this, right? One is the most uncomfortable conversation. One of the most uncomfortable conversations you can ever have with anybody is the breakup conversation. And on the other side, it's to be part of the breakup conversation, right? And you couldn't have those conversations. And then underneath that is the relationship issues.
Yeah.
I had a girl who used to put her wet towel after she showered on my bed. And it was the most upsetting thing, and I would not say anything. And it would just fester and fester, and it would brew, and I wouldn't say it again, and I wouldn't say it again, and then let's say she does something else that pissed me off,
Yeah.
or something that just I didn't like. And I would let it go. I'd let it go. I'm like, nah, no sweat off my back. Like, I'm cool. I'm mentally strong. Something else would happen. Okay, she's not doing this right. It all blew up in my face. This girl is not right for me. I need to break up with her. Same thing with you.
Yeah.
If you had these uncomfortable conversations with every problem you faced in your relationship and hammered it out like two adults face to face, think about that relationship. Maybe you would have had an amazing relationship and been married and had kids with her right now.
Yeah, and I think that's the point. Like, shit, from the experience I'm telling, like, you know, it's like, man, if I could go back and now if I could have this conversation, more of this conversation, Tim Ferriss has got that right, man. Like, the more uncomfortable conversation you have, the much more fulfilled you feel sometimes. And to your position, wherever you are in your life, take a step back and really think about, like, in your relationship, are you having those uncomfortable conversations to better your relationship for tomorrow?
Yeah, and if you're single, same thing. If you want to be with somebody, you're going to have that uncomfortable conversation of, hey, I like you, can we be exclusive? Unknown. They could be like, nope, I want to date other people, or, yeah, you know what, we should be together. Either way, that uncomfortable conversation is allowing you to not waste time anymore. You know either they're in, and you're going to have a new boyfriend or a girlfriend,
Yep.
or they're out, and so they're not the right person for you. You need to move forward. So having those uncomfortable conversations, whether you're single, whether you're in a relationship, whether you're not happy in your relationship, it's going to make or break anything you do, is having those uncomfortable conversations. And that brings us to friendship. For example, I know you wish you had an uncomfortable conversation that was received by you versus you're the one having initiated.
Yeah, like, you know, it's like one of my friends married one of my exes.
I can't even imagine what that's like, but
again, like having that conversation could have maybe the uncomfortable conversation, knowing that I don't know what the outcome's going to be, but let me have the balls and courage to have this uncomfortable conversation with him, could have changed the direction of the friendship.
do you expect that he should have had the conversation with you, or do you think you should have had the conversation with him?
Why would I have a conversation with him? He's the one who should have a conversation. I found out
But
other people.
Don't you think that other people also think that way, and that's how relationships are broken? Because one party is saying, no, he needs to have that conversation with me. The other party is like, no, he needs to have that conversation with me. And then nobody talks, and then you don't have a relationship in this case. So let's assume that you are not the one to have initiated that conversation, and he should have initiated that conversation with you. What do you think that conversation should have looked like to save your friendship?
I don't know the answer to that, but it could have been a great place to start off with because of, hey, I am taking responsibilities from my action, and I'm going to have a conversation which is needed to happen, and I'm willing to see what the outcome can be.
So it's the unknown again. It's you don't know how that conversation is going to go, but it ultimately comes down to the intention behind that conversation.
Exactly.
If you want to save that friendship, if you want to save that marriage, if you want to save that relationship, and you care about it deeply enough, you're going to need to have that conversation, even if you have to say sorry.
Yeah.
It ultimately means that that relationship is saved.
Intention. That is what's so important in this part of it, guys. Like, in your friendships and your relationships that you have, it all comes down to intention. Like, if you and I get into an argument, my intention is not to make sure that I tear each other apart, but the intention is, dude, how do we make each other better?
How do we fix this? How do we get to that next level of friendship? Because every uncomfortable conversation that you have, you now know each other better, and you've gone through an experience that's unique to just you two. So now you go to that deeper layer of friendship, and now you're building that trust.
Yeah.
Right? Next point we're going to get to is family. Right? Think about kids. Think about, let's say you have a child, and the birds and the bees conversation, right? You got to talk about where do babies come from?
Yeah.
Or I think in your example, you worked at an organization that was helping awareness for parents to talk about when girls go through their first period, for example.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. If you're a father and if your daughter is going through a period for the first time itself, you better be there, right? And you better have that uncomfortable conversation saying, sweetheart, you're about to experience something that's going to change you from being a young girl into a woman. Because now you can actually carry a fucking child. You can carry literally a human being inside you.
Yeah, I can't even imagine having that conversation with like my future baby girl, right? But that conversation, that 60 seconds to 5 minutes can make or break the rest of the relationship that you'll have with your daughter the rest of your life. Because if you get uncomfortable and you're like, talk to your mom about this, even though your daughter brought it up to you or you were part of that situation right now, and if you do this right, if you have the uncomfortable conversation, just with love and intention, and even if you don't know the right words to say, your intention are so pure because you love your daughter so much, you have that conversation, she'll come to you in the future with any of these things. She may not go to her mom now, she may come to you. Do you want to be that father that your daughter can talk to about uncomfortable things? Or will she always be like, well, dad never understands, so I'm just going to talk to mom? Think about the ripple effect, the domino effect that can have in the future.
I think it's so important as a father that you are involved in that. Like, I don't, like, my niece, right? Like, she's my niece, but I know for goddamn for sure I'm going to be there for her in this type of period, right? Because it's like, man, like, you got to build that bond and trust. And that can lead to some amazing things in life.
Yeah, you get through that layer of bullshit that we all have. It's just, let's tear through that. And I know it takes time, but you got to get there to have the right relationship. And this kind of brings us to our next point is the professional world. I once asked a boss of mine for a promotion, I felt like I deserved it. I felt like I deserved a raise and a promotion to a nicer title and more responsibility. And he said, no, you're not ready for it. And that's it.
That's it?
That's it. I was willing to have the uncomfortable conversation, which, many of us are so uncomfortable asking for a raise, asking for a promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So
or
I was
asking for help too.
Asking for help too. That's a great one, actually. But this boss did not have the conversation with me that I would have expected, which is, well, you're not ready for this now, but here's an action plan of how we can get you there. So obviously he didn't think I was good enough. I mean, that was my assumption. In my head, I'm like, he just flat out said no, and he didn't give me an action plan of how I can get to that next level. So obviously he doesn't think I'm good enough. I'm out of here.
Yeah,
and I quit.
And that's a sign of, I hate to say it, but that's a sign of unsuccessful leadership. If it was a successful leader, in my eyes, the successful leader would have been, in this conversation, could have said something along the lines, hey, gee, I love the ambition. I love that you want to take on more responsibility and you want a promotion. However, I think you need just a little bit more time. And here's the blueprint on how you can actually achieve this in the next 6 months or 8 months. And come to me and ask me how I can help you to get to that level.
Exactly. And this leader was not able to have that uncomfortable conversation. And again, that made me feel like I wasn't respected. I wasn't valued. And so I left, right? And then he was shocked that I gave my resignation letter. Said, you should not be shocked about this. You were not willing to have the uncomfortable conversations for my growth.
Yeah.
So from a boss perspective, I think that's one point. I know you, as a leader yourself, you've had to have some uncomfortable conversations with your team so that the team can just perform at its best level.
Yeah, and I think it's very important if you're in a leadership position or even if you're in a corporation, right? Like, it is important for you to make sure that you are understanding the responsibilities and being able to communicate those clearly. So therefore, the assumption part is gone, right? So the reason why I think a lot of time in the corporate world people fail is the assumption and not, like you said, having this uncomfortable conversation. And when somebody isn't meeting your expectations or the deadlines, you better goddamn have a conversation with them and make them realize that, hey, I rely on you to help me finish the project, or I'm relying on you to help me close this out, so therefore we can move to the next level of the task. And if you have not met those things, like, you need to have that conversation. It's nothing personal. Remember that it's not, you're not talking to them personally. It's just from a professional point of view, just letting them know that, hey, you let me down.
And what we can do to prevent that and moving forward, right? How can I help you so that you don't do that? The next point in the professional world is clients. So think about this. Think about the number of uncomfortable conversations you may need to have with your clients. And if you think about this one role that we're going to talk about, when you ask somebody what they want to do at a company or what they want to grow up as, if they want to be in a corporate world, oh, I want to do marketing. I want to do customer service. I want to do UX design.
All the sexy
product
stuff.
manager. Yeah.
Accounting.
Accounting. That doesn't seem so sexy, but it's easy.
It's
There's
easy.
no uncomfortable conversations in accounting.
It's you and numbers.
You and numbers. But there's very few times when I've heard people say, I want to do sales. I want to sell stuff. If you think about it, if you take out the executives, the VPs, the directors, I mean, they're responsible for new business, bringing in new business, but the people at the, let's call them at the ground level, it's the ones that are selling that are making the most money. Why? Because they're having the most amount of uncomfortable conversations. Hey, we're worth $1 million. Sign this dotted line, and here you go. It's tough to close a sale, right? Nobody wants to be in sales. There's all these stereotypes about what salesmen are, salespeople are like. But guess what? They're having the most amount of uncomfortable conversations. They're making the most amount of money.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Right on point, right? I mean, if you think about the amount of commission salespeople earn, it's probably more than what some of the people earn in terms of their base salary.
Exactly. No one wants to have the uncomfortable conversation. And the last point, to kind of end it on a light note, man, what's up with elevators? What are we supposed to talk about, Kyvan? Are we even supposed to say anything? Are we supposed to be quiet? Like, when there's 32 floors, there's like 20 seconds of you're stuck with this person. What do you talk about? Should elevator conversation be a thing? Should you go into an elevator and not say anything?
I think you should definitely have a conversation in the elevator because you don't know anything about the person, but at least having a conversation and complimenting them on something could lead to some amazing things. I've actually experienced a few things as well. So, but I think people should get uncomfortable in the elevator and have that little uncomfortable conversation.
Any pointers for our listeners of what to say?
Look what type of watch they wear. It'll say a lot about somebody, the type of watch they wear. If somebody's wearing, for example, Louis Vuitton watch or something, you know that person is somewhat in fashion or maybe at a higher level in terms of just a society. And you can start a conversation from there. Especially the other things that I look at is the backpack they carry. Is it to me backpack or is it some really cool one? So those are great starter conversational points, right? So it's not awkward, but you're also like, oh, I noticed the small things about you.
That's key, noticing the small thing. I always cop out when they have a dog.
Yeah.
That's the easiest one. Oh, what's the dog's name? Is it
Yeah.
him or her? Like, what's their personality like? Are they needy? Are they adventurous? Do they bite? Like, can I pet them? So that's usually my go-to. But
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, I'm a shoes guy, so I'll usually be like, oh, nice Jordans, or hey, heels. Like, that's pretty cool. Like those. How do you walk in those? Like
Yeah.
that looks really tough. And the conversation ends up at like some girl just told me like, oh, I'm going to France next week with my mom. And I remembered that, so next time we got into an elevator, I was like, how was your trip to France? And that's it. Like, now we're continuing that conversation. Although it's on the elevator, there's a friendship being built slowly.
Yeah. No, just remember, people, like, the uncomfortable conversations are hard. I get it. They're not easy. If it was easy, everybody else would be doing it, right? But it will make you better. It will make you grow. And if you're having any types of issues in your relationships, with your friendships, with your professional, colleagues, with your kids, have those uncomfortable conversation because it will just make things better. It will help you grow. It will help this relationship grow and stop looking and fearing the unknown.
Yeah, don't take the easy way out.
Take the hard one because that's where growth happens. Till next time.